Good afternoon and welcome back to Tactics Board. Plenty going on this weekend as Norwich City travel to face Cardiff in another championship game. Of course, a lot of pressure on David Wagner and a feeling that if they lose this one, things could really go against him. The international break follows this match and that would provide the perfect opportunity for Norwich to go and search for a new head coach. New sporting director starts next Monday and Stuart Webber's last game watching over the Canaries will be on Saturday. So there is plenty to discuss. I'm going to break down how I see the game going tactically and the team that I think David Wagner will start for this game. So without further ado, this is the 11 I've predicted. I've gone for George Long in goal, Jack Stacey at right back, Danny Bart and Jaden Warner at centre back, Dimitris Yannoulis at left back, Gabriel Sara and Kenny McLean in the centre of midfield, with Jonathan Rowe on the right, Borja Sainz on the left, with Marcelino Nunez just behind Adam Eder. So to go from the back, not really any other choice than George Long. Of course, they brought Vicente Reyes back from his loan at Braintree Town to provide some more cover for the Norwich City second choice, but I don't expect to see him starting. Of course, Angus Gunn expected back after the international break, and although George Long hasn't made any real significant errors, I don't think he's impressed too many people with his performances in the Norwich goal. I think his distribution could be better. I think there are certain times when he could be doing a little bit more to save shots. Admittedly, he hasn't had a lot of protection from the defence in front of him, but I don't think he's done enough to earn the starting spot, even after Angus Gunn returns. But of course, not many options for Wagner other than Long going into this game. And at right back, I've gone for Jack Stacey. I do think that Kellen Fisher deserves to be back in the team, but that's not generally where Wagner has gone with his team selection. I think especially in a game where he really, really needs to perform, I think for his own future, he needs to win, to be honest. I think he will lean on that experience that is so important to him and that he's lent on so often during his time at Norwich. And although Stacey hasn't really performed for a couple of months now and Fisher has been impressive in the last two games, I don't really see that changing. So I've got Stacey at right back. At centre-back, it's definitely going to be an interesting one because it's clear that Wagner hasn't fancied Danny Bart so far. Brought in, of course, on the last day of the transfer window, having been in the Championship team of the season for his exploits with Sunderland last season. But Jaden Warner, who hasn't been in several matchday squads, was picked to start over him in Ben Gibson's absence on Sunday. But I have got him starting for this one because it's a choice between that or Grant Hanley, who of course hasn't played a championship match for over 7 months. He played for the under-21s last Friday and actually really impressed me. I went to see that game, spoke to him, so I'd recommend that interview on the Pinken Plus app and at pinken.com. But I think it would be rushing him back a little bit too fast, and Wagner tends to err on the side of caution when it comes to injuries. So I've got Bart and Warner in there. No doubt for me that Hanley will be back in the team as soon as he is properly available and fit and ready, but Wagner seems to take his time with that one, and of course it remains to be seen whether he'll be in charge by the time Hanley is fully fit. At left back, I've got Dimitris Yannoulis, and I think Norwich need to see an improvement from him. He's been pretty poor in the last few games, to be honest, and having been praising him quite often before that, and although he does suit Wagner's system quite a lot, it is a disappointment to see how he's been performing in those games. But overall, the team seems to have lost that rhythm and lost the ability to really come through adversity, and I put him in that bracket. He's been substituted for Przemysław Płeta a couple of times now, and Płeta has looked the better player, actually looked much more of a threat going forward at least. Admittedly, that's mostly in situations where Norwich are chasing the game and probably the left back has to do less defensive work. So you have to consider both sides of the game, of course, but Yannoulis has come under fire for his defensive capabilities as well. So yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think overall still the player that Wagner trusts the most, and that's why I think he'll start at left back for this game. In centre midfield, I've gone for Gabriel Sara and Kenny McLean. I think Wagner had his fingers burned when he tried the three in midfield with Adam Forshaw, who really, really struggled to make an impact against Sunderland and then came off at half-time. Marcelino Nunez started the last game and I thought was okay. Probably didn't have as much of an impact as he would have liked to against Blackburn, but I'd expect to see him in there because I don't think he's done too much wrong, and to be honest, compared to the alternatives, he probably is up there as one of the best options. On the right, I've gone for Jonathan Rowe, and I've only moved him over from the left to accommodate for Borja Sainz. Of course, Rowe's still the standout player for Norwich this season, despite struggling in the last few games to really make the impact that he would have wanted. I think he's still shown the drive on the ball, the pace, the urgency to make something happen, and that's been lacking from a lot of the Norwich team, to be honest, in recent games. So I'd expect to see him in that 11, of course, and I've got him on the right so that Sainz can come in. And although his situation has been an example of Wagner being so tempered with the injury situation, I think he needs to throw something different in there, because Ono Hernandez hasn't worked in recent games, Christian Fastnacht hasn't worked, and Sainz, although he hasn't been especially impressive in his substitute appearances, I think with a start behind him and a little bit of time to get into the game, could just offer something different and a different type of threat. And it probably allows Norwich to get forward and press a little bit more, because that's another area of their game they've struggled with in recent weeks. Although it was a tenet of Wagner's setup previously, he's sort of abandoned that as he's come under pressure, and I think Sainz would allow him to get back to that. Admittedly, it feels like his days are numbered anyway, and probably trying to build for the long term isn't the best idea, but I still think that Norwich are more likely to get something from the game from pressing and trying to nick something in that way than sitting behind the ball and defending against a very capable Cardiff side, because they've shown, to be honest, that they don't have the defensive resilience, especially with this midfield setup of Gabriel Sara and Kelly McLean in there. They just don't have the resilience and the ability to block balls through to make that work, especially in the 4-2-3-1, how Cardiff set up with Callum Robinson in the 10 and a lot of movement and the ability to pass through those lines. I think Norwich could really struggle with that, but I've gone for Adam Idah up front just because I think Wagner will change it. It's very difficult to predict his 11s at this point, and I think it's becoming a negative at this stage, because he's just throwing players in there who haven't been in the matchday squad. He's making almost inexplicable changes, and that's not a good sign for the future of a head coach for me. So I've just thrown Adam Idah in there because Hwang didn't score in the last game, and I think Wagner will be tempted to make a change. Idah didn't even come onto the pitch in the last game, and that seems to be the formula for how the German likes to pick his starting 11s. So I've gone for Idah up front, and I think it's going to be a very difficult task for Norwich. Cardiff have been outperforming, to be honest, their squad. I think they're way more than the sum of their parts, and the work of Errol Bullitt, whose appointment was ridiculed a little bit this summer because he's somebody that a lot of people haven't heard of, but in the Championship in recent years, that's a move that we've seen has been very successful. A lot of head coaches have come from foreign countries and from smaller leagues where it doesn't really feel like the pedigree is similar to the Championship, and then they've come and used very clever decisions and good tactical nous to come and take over the division. Of course, Daniel Farke is one of those. David Wagner was one of those at one stage, and there are numerous other examples in the Championship in recent years, and Bullitt looks like he could be the next one. I don't think anybody was expecting Cardiff to be in the promotion picture, but they're 7th in the table now, and they look like they could really be threatening that playoff picture in the long term, because they've come through adversity this season. They've had a couple of defeats, built momentum, had defeats, and then built it again, and they're in a real good moment right now. So I think it's going to be a very difficult task for Norwich to go there and get a victory, which is what it feels like Wagner would need to save his job. Of course, he will hope that he survives to the other side of the international break, but with change on the horizon at Norwich City, it's going to be a very difficult one for them. But there's still excitement ahead of what could change under Ben Napper, and I think we're all looking forward to seeing how that develops. So keep it locked to Pinkun.com and the Pinkun Plus app. You can go to pinkun.com/subscribe to learn more about the app and about our subscription, which is only $1.99 for the first 2 months, and then $2.99 thereafter, which, if you ask me, admittedly a very biased opinion, but I think it's very good value. So head over there. Of course, we'll have every kit covered from the Cardiff City Stadium. So keep yourself updated there. Thank you for joining me here, and I'll see you again soon.